Time has been described as a relentless predator, and we have many ways that we attempt to tame and constrain that predator. But are we successful? I'm your host, Leah.
And I'm Steve. Today we'll take you on a journey through the constructs of time. Buckle up.
Hope you got time.
If you have an appetite for the strange and bizarre, then pull up a chair and grab a spoon for another intriguing serving of Remnant Stew. Remnant Stew is gluten-free, organic, made from all natural, free-range ingredients, and guaranteed to provide the recommended daily serving of curiosity.
Well, now before we get to our stories about time, let's take a little time to look at the calendar. Today is March 14th, Pi Day here in the United States.
Pie.
You know, here in the U.S., we typically abbreviate our dates by using the number of the month first and then the date. Now, Europe does just the opposite. I had a little trouble renting a car in France because my birthday is 11/3, but they kept saying it was 3/11.
Wait, we did something different than everyone else?
Yes.
Yeah, imagine that. And honestly,
So weird.
It doesn't make as much. The way we do it doesn't make sense, but
That's
okay.
true. Anyway, that makes today 3/14, which is the same as the generally rounded off value of pi. Pi, by the way, is the circumference of a circle divided by its diameter, and it's always 3.14. So, happy Pi Day out there.
We have a restaurant. Have you guys ever been to?
Pie Town?
No, House of
House of
Pies.
Pies?
House of Pies,
House of
yes.
And their logo is a house with the symbol of pi,
Right.
Yes.
the mathematical symbol. So anyway,
It's an all-around good place, but anyway.
also on this day, Albert Einstein was born.
Yay.
German-American physicist, engineer, and academic Nobel Prize laureate, just in case you didn't know who he was. And
That Einstein.
No.
that Einstein.
Yeah.
So, and here's some cool Einstein trivia. Einstein is often said to have failed math in school. Have you heard that?
I've
Yes.
heard it.
Yeah,
I heard
I've
the rumor
it.
too,
I
yes.
grew up
Yeah.
hearing that all my childhood. That is not true. Not true. And in 1952, he was offered the presidency of Israel
Wow.
and declined.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't his thing.
Exactly. That's pretty much what he said.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
do politics.
No, I want pie.
He was also the inspiration for Yoda,
Okay.
which to me that doesn't surprise me really.
We could do an episode on Einstein, don't you think?
Yeah, we really could, and we mention him in this one. So.
Right. Now, tomorrow, the 15th of March, is famous or infamous as the Ides of March.
Mm-hmm.
On that fateful day back in 44 BC, Julius Caesar was murdered on the floor of the Roman Senate.
A2 Brutus?
Yeah, we'll talk about him a little bit more later in this episode. 17th of March, of course, Thursday is St. Patrick's Day, so we send a shout-out to all of our listeners over there on the Emerald Isle and to all Irish friends everywhere.
Get your green out.
It's
That's
one of my
right.
favorite holidays. I love it.
And Friday the 18th, it's a great day. It's National Sloppy Joe Day.
Hey.
This day is dedicated to the greatest sandwich of them all, the Sloppy Joe. The origin of the Sloppy Joe is thought to go back to the 1920s in Havana, Cuba. A bartender named Jose Otero created and served a sandwich based on a Cuban dish of shredded beef, tomato sauce, and spices. He also sold iced seafood, which would often melt and get the bar floor all sloppy and wet. Since Jose was known for the sandwich and the wet, sloppy floors, customers linked the two and began referring to him as Sloppy Joe.
No way. Are you
That's
serious?
horrible. All I'm thinking now is, I just want a good brisket sandwich.
I
know.
thought Sloppy Joe is just named that because it's really hard to eat and not
No, it's
keep
sloppy.
it off of everything. Yeah.
It's messy.
But that's hilarious.
When my wife is off visiting the grandchildren and I'm stuck at home, it turns out to be one of my go-to meals as I revert to my slovenly bachelor habits. But anyway, March 19th, I want to wish my big brother Dickie, one of the nicest people I or anyone else would ever know, a happy birthday. He really was like Wally Cleaver, honestly, if you ever you remember
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah, I
Cleaver.
remember
He was just
Wally.
the nicest guy. And so happy birthday to Dick.
Well, I do want to say that go back one day on March 18th is a full moon. It is known as the worm moon. Earthworms come out at the end of winter, and so
wait, are we going to start the dancing stuff and hollering and everything? Maybe dropping water on the ground.
No, we're talking about the worm charming festival.
Yeah, the worm
we're
charming
going
festival.
Yeah, that was one of our other episodes.
Exactly.
Who can get the worms out of the ground? But anyway.
But we're going to talk about the full moons later on in this episode. And also the 20th of March is the first day of spring. It's the equinox.
Yay.
The sun will shine directly on the equator, and there will be nearly equal amounts of day and night throughout the world. This is also the first day of spring, vernal equinox, in the northern hemisphere, and the first day of fall, autumnal, equinox in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, good. So happy equinox, everybody. All right, let's just take a quick little break here and let us just speak to you from our heart for a second. As you know, we are currently in our third season here at Remnant Stew, and we have brought you so many crazy and fun stories in our 40 or so episodes. We have been downloaded over 7,000 times across 42 different countries.
Wow.
And we are so thankful to every single one of our listeners.
Yes.
We really love what we do, and we are committed to continue bringing you more stories of the strange and bizarre for many more seasons. But while it is free for you to subscribe and listen, it isn't free for us to produce.
That's right. So we are asking a favor from all of our listeners. No, we're not asking for money,
but if you are so inclined, we're not going to stop you.
Don't pay attention to Phil.
No, we are asking instead that you take just a couple minutes of your time to show us some love by writing a short note saying what you love about Remnant Stew.
Yeah.
We are currently in a contest for emerging podcasts to be awarded sponsorships, and the notes that you send will help our standing in the contest.
Absolutely.
It takes just a couple of minutes. Please go to our website, www.remnantstew.com, and click on Show the Love and follow the instructions from there. It really is very easy, quick to do, and it would mean so much to us.
Absolutely.
So thank you in advance.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. And now, back to our regularly scheduled episode. Dun, dun, dun.
Well, time is a topic that's on our minds more than you may realize. It seems to cut across cultures and generations as an overall general human concern. I did a quick search about time, particularly songs about time, and quickly hit on dozens of titles, some familiar ones and others that I had forgotten about. Can you think of any songs about time?
I don't know who sings it. Time in a Bottle?
Yeah, Time in a Bottle.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was Jim Croce, I think. Well, yeah. Anyway, I wrote down a few more. Time is on My Side from the Rolling Stones, 1964. The Time of Your Life, Green Day, 1997.
Mm-hmm.
If I Could Turn Back Time, Cher, 1989.
I could turn back time.
And now we get her solo.
There you go. I love this one. Does anybody really know what time it is? From Chicago, 1969. I love Chicago.
Chicago's a great band.
Chicago's a great band.
That is a great
sure
band.
is. Pink Floyd, Time,
yep.
1973, and with a lot of alarms and stuff going off at the beginning of it. Too Much Time on My Hands, Styx, 1983. That's right in your
Styx.
wheelhouse.
Yep, that's right there.
Yeah. Clocks from Coldplay, 2002.
Who? I'm just kidding.
That's for the younger crowd. Sitting on the dock of the bay,
Oh, I love
wasting time.
There's a particular family member that has that as their ringtone. It's great to set it off.
That was Otis Redding, 1968. Going Back in Time, Huey Lewis and the News, 1985, and that was featured in the Back to the Future movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, of course, The Times They Are A-Changin', Bob Dylan, 1964.
Oh, I've got another one. Cyndi Lauper, Time After Time.
Time after time.
That's
okay.
a good one.
Many, many songs about time. There's also numerous quotes on time, and here are a few interesting ones. The two most powerful warriors are patience and time.
Mm-hmm.
Let that one sink in a little bit. That's from
It's
Leo.
time to go to bed. My mom.
Before I was rudely interrupted, that was Leo Tolstoy from War and Peace. Time is what we want most, but what we use worst.
Oh, that hurts.
That's
That steps on my toes.
From William Penn, Fruits of the Solitude. I think that was just his pen name. That was your joke, Bill. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll just ink that one in.
Yeah. Time is what we want most. Oh, I already used that one. Let's go on to the next one then. I already read that one. We don't want to reread the same one over again now, do we?
Now we're into repeating or deja vu.
Yes. That's like I just heard that one. The most precious resource we have is time. Steve Jobs. Lost time is never found again. Benjamin Franklin and Poor Richard's Almanac. And this is one of my favorites. No man goes before his time unless the boss leaves early. Groucho Marx.
And wasn't there like a commercial? We will sell no wine before
it's time. That's right. It's time. So you see, time is always on our minds, even in pop culture. Oh, Phil, I wonder if you might have any timely jokes there to share with us.
Don't worry. They'll come in their due time.
Oh gosh.
Okay, so we don't even get to hear them and react to them now?
No, they just show up.
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, there are so many different fascinating areas about time that today we will really only scratch the surface, but we came up with some interesting bits about time that we believe that you will enjoy. So let's start off considering how we keep track of time.
Okay, so let's talk about clocks. Tick-tock.
Let's talk about clocks.
Have you ever wondered why clocks turn clockwise?
Well, they wouldn't go the other way, would they? Or there wouldn't be clocks.
That'd be unwise.
Well, I mean, it could have, but it's due to sundials. So before there were clocks, there were sundials. And since most of the scientific and technological developments of the time, such as clockmaking, were happening in the northern hemisphere, the shadow of a sundial moves from left to right as the sun in the sky moves from east to west.
Oh, okay. That makes
when
sense.
clocks were created, the movement of the hands mimicked the movement of the shadow of sundials.
As it moved across the day. That makes sense.
Okay. And I have to say, time is such a weird concept. I mean, we celebrate anniversaries and birthdays, but I mostly think about it on New Year's when everyone is making resolutions and revolutions around the sun.
Yeah, that happens too.
We're revolving.
And embracing the idea of a new beginning, right? Yeah. But that's when it really occurs to me that time is a human construct.
That was so last year.
Yeah. And I don't make New Year's resolutions. I just keep on keeping on. Yeah. But it's really kind of ambiguous where we set it down and said this is the end of the year and this is the beginning of the year.
Right.
And different peoples have done it differently.
Mm-hmm.
So we chose, January 1st. And, I mean, our year, of course, is based on our trip around the sun.
Right.
But what if we colonize Mars? Like,
it's going to be a longer year.
One Martian year is 687 Earth days. How are we going to plan our Zoom meetings with the Martian colonists? like what calendar are we going to
Are we on Earth time or Mars time? Would you set your chronometer right, please?
And do they only get to drink champagne and sing Auld Lang Syne like only half as often as we do?
But it's going to be a real blowout party on that every Martian New Year.
Anyway,
real nuts up there.
I am constantly.
Truly, the whole thing of UTC or universal time,
right?
It just expands.
Yeah, well,
it truly becomes universal time.
It's going to have to expand and change too.
So will Greenwich still be the timekeeper of everything?
Well, I don't know.
We're getting to that.
Yeah. Well,
we're getting to that.
And I think a lot of people, I am constantly fighting with time. I'm sure I need about 3 more lifetimes to do all the things that I want to do, and yet I find myself wasting that time that I have. And in spite of all my time struggles, I really do have a fascination with the concept of time and a deep love of clocks of all time, or of all kinds. Sorry.
Yeah, I love clocks too. They're interesting.
So I have a list today of some of the coolest clocks around the world. And
nice.
This first one is my absolute favorite.
If you got time, you can listen in.
All right. You got time. You got nothing else to do.
It's just not ticking by at all.
So this clock is one that some people may think to be creepy or scary looking, which is kind of my jam. So
wait, Leah bringing up a creepy clock? Oh,
yeah,
that would be so weird.
So
I saw that coming.
It's the Corpus clock, or otherwise known as the grasshopper clock, located at street level on the outside of the Taylor Library at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge University in the United Kingdom. The face of the clock is a rippling 24-karat gold-plated stainless steel disc that invokes the idea of the Big Bang Theory of creation. And this is really cool to me.
Snap, there it is.
The steel plate was made by using an explosive charge to press a thin sheet of stainless steel onto an underwater mold. So they created this explosion underwater to create the ripples. And I'm going to show you guys.
So, like they shot gold out of a cannon and hit the,
No,
hit this
no,
thing?
they had this thin. Well, and it wasn't gold at the time. It was just a thin plate. Thin plate of stainless steel.
I got
Then they just spray painted gold on it.
I got you.
Yeah, and so there's a picture, and we'll have it on our social media. There's a picture of the plate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no hands or numerals on the corpus clock. Instead, it displays the time by opening individual slits in the back of the clock face that's lit with blue LED lights. These slits are arranged in 3 concentric circles or rings, displaying hours, minutes, and seconds. But the most notable feature of the clock is the large grasshopper-type monster. John C. Taylor, an old member of Cambridge University, is the creator behind the clock. He decided to turn the clock inside out so that the escapement, which is usually hidden within the inner working of a clock, it's a mechanism within the clock, and the escape wheel it turns would be his clock's defining feature. The piece is known as the grasshopper escapement, so named because of its resemblance to the insect. And that's what clicks on the cog. Anyway, so in the corpus clock, that resemblance is exploited to create the chronophage, or time eater, that sits atop the clock face and visibly and audibly eats time.
Nice.
Yes. And it's beautiful, but freaky looking.
Yeah.
There's a picture of it. Taylor explains it as follows. The gold eyelids travel across the eye and disappear again in an instant. If you are not watching carefully, you will not even notice. Sometimes you will even see 2 blinks in quick succession.
Oh, that's cool.
As the huge pendulum, well, and the whole thing, okay, so there's a pendulum and there's this thing, but it doesn't necessarily go tick, tick, tick like every second. Like sometimes it speeds up, sometimes it slows down, but it keeps time very well.
Accurately.
But it's designed to do it that way.
It's playing tricks with you.
And again, as Taylor said, as the huge pendulum below the clock rocks the chronophage as he steps around the great escape wheel, each backward and forward movement is used by sprag clutches to wind up the spring drive, or the drive spring. A positioned step prevents the spring from being overwound, yet allows the spring to be ready in an instant to drive the blink. The mechanism is released
Are you speaking English?
Yeah, right.
I'm speaking clock.
Okay, good.
The mechanism is released by a counter wheel with semi-random spacing, so the blink, and this is the blink of the eye of the monster, okay? That takes place at any position in the to and fro motion of the pendulum, so you can't tell when it's actually going to happen. A further count wheel mechanism chooses a single or double blink while the air damper at the top of the gear train slows the action to a realistic pace. All of that to say that it's unpredictable what's going to happen with this. It's constantly keeping time, but like I said, it speeds up and it slows down, and the grasshopper monster blinks and does
its own things.
Yeah, it does its own thing. So
wow,
that's awesome.
That sounds really interesting to see, though. I think
the corpus clock is expected to be able to run accurately for at least 200 years.
Wow,
it is a work of art, and we have a picture of it on our social media.
We need a video of it, I think.
Right.
You know what? That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I got my info from Wikipedia and an article on OxfordSummerCourses.com and Corpus Christi College website.
Nice.
Okay, so another unusual clock, and one that we've mentioned before.
Right, yeah.
I think we mentioned it in Runes and Ciphers episode in August of last year, because it's talked about, or it's mentioned in the CIA Kryptos monument.
Right.
It alludes to the clock. So located in Berlin, the Mengeleer translated as set theory clock. My stepdad is German, and he's going to
Yeah, he's going to let you know.
Yeah, he's going to let me know.
He's going to give you, time.
He's going to give it to me.
Mengenlehrer. I like Mengenlehrer. Or Mengenlehrer.
Yeah, Mengeleer.
Okay.
And is clock. So translated as set theory clock. It was installed in 1975. It consists of a circular yellow light on top and 4 bars of light underneath that. And the clock is red from top row to the bottom, and it's got different lights. The top row has 4 red fields. And anyway, it's really complicated. I'm just going to say it. It's really complicated to tell time. You can just look at your phone. But But it's there. It was designed to be retro-futuristic conversation piece.
Right.
And it's kept its time in its own way for nearly half a decade now.
I think the top row, it's got, like 6 hours, and the middle row is like 1
Yeah.
hours, and then there's minutes, and then,
Yeah, and then the top light blinks to denote when there's odd or even
Right.
numbered. It's on when it's odd
yeah.
numbered, or even numbered seconds when it's unlit. It's so I don't. I
It's
can't
a really
imagine.
interesting clock. I think you can figure it out if you look at
You
it, though.
can
Yeah,
figure
you watch
it
it long
out.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I looked at it, and I thought, I think I could figure that out.
But I
yeah.
can never really picture somebody going, I wonder what time it is, and then
running
looking
over to
at
look
it,
at it.
and being able to go, oh, okay, it's 7:00.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the last one, and then I'm going to talk about, is one of the oldest ways. No, it's not the last one. Sorry. One of the oldest ways of keeping time is a water clock. Much like an hourglass, has a certain amount of sand in it that takes a specific amount of time to fall from the top half to the bottom half. A water clock works on the same basic principle. Water clocks are one of the oldest time measuring instruments and uses the flow of water to measure the passing of time. In a water clock, a container is filled with water, and of course the water is drained slowly and evenly out of the container, and the container has markings that are used to show the passage of time.
Right.
But the water clock in Osaka, Japan is not at all ancient. It uses cutting-edge technology to communicate the current time. Located at a railway station, the water clock has been named one of the most beautiful clocks in the world, but can best be described really as a water fountain. The fountain is 6.5 meters wide and 4 meters tall. So to us, that's 21 feet wide and 13 feet tall. And water is shot from nozzles located at the top and falls to the rocks below. Each line of water is controlled by a computer. By controlling the amount of water let out of each nozzle, the fountain is able to display the time every minute. In between the time display, images of flowers and plants are created by the illuminating falling water. It's really cute. And we'll have a video on there. The water can be controlled as small as 1/100th of a second.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The water clock uses only a small amount of water, so it's not just beautiful, but also eco-friendly. And I got my info from Osaka-Yanen, YANEN.com.
So it's located at a railway station. That's interesting.
That's
All
right. And so travelers,
Well,
and
so
it's
you don't miss your train because,
Well, yeah, that's
you got to get there on time.
We're going to get to it later, but there is a connection between trains and clocks, actually. So go ahead.
Well,
okay.
timing is everything.
Yeah.
Timing is everything. So this last clock I'm going to talk about is the oldest so far, and I think, so that water clock is beautiful, but this one is beautiful and jaw-dropping. It's the elephant clock, designed and built by Ismail al-Jazari, an engineer and inventor of various clocks who lived from 1136 to 1206. It is striking to look at, featuring a sculpture of a large and splendid Asian elephant upon which is a howdah, I think is how it's pronounced, a tall canopied seat for riding on the back of an elephant. The timing mechanism is based on a water-filled basin, so again, a water clock, hidden inside the elephant. In the bucket is a deep bowl floating in the water, but with a small hole in the center. So the bowl takes a half an hour to fill through this hole. In the process of sinking, the bowl pulls a string attached to a seesaw mechanism in the tower on top of the elephant. This releases a ball that drops into the mouth of a serpent, causing the serpent to tip forward, which pulls a sunken bowl out of the water via strings.
This sounds like a Rube Goldberg device.
Yes,
right?
that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And it's amazing that it was so precise that it worked. All at the same time, a system of strings causes a figure in the tower on top of the elephant to raise either the left or right hand. And the mahout, I think is what it's pronounced, the elephant driver at the front to hit a drum. This indicates a half hour or full hour. Next, the snake tips back and the cycle repeats itself as long as balls remain in the upper reservoir to power the emptying of the bowl.
Okay.
So as far as I can tell, the original elephant clock has been lost to time, but Al-Jazari described it so meticulously in a book that there are several recreations of this magnificent timepiece.
And he created that, he lived 800 years ago. So
That's right. That's right. And
That's
so,
impressive.
Yeah, so he described it so well. And he had this book that he had so many different mechanisms and clocks and stuff, but I think this was like his best creation.
I love clocks, and I think those are some really interesting sounding ones.
What's up, everybody? And thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to us try and sell you on our podcast, The Reluctant Historian.
Wait, this is a history podcast?
Well, obviously, I'm a history teacher.
This isn't what I signed up for.
Okay. Well, Dakota, before you try and get out of this, let's just play the trailer, and I'll show you and the audience how you can both love and hate history to enjoy this podcast.
Fine, play the trailer.
If you love history, or you absolutely hate it, The Reluctant Historian is the podcast for you. I'm Liz, and I love history.
I'm Dakota, and history is the worst.
So come along with me as I try to convince my husband that history is actually cool. Each week, I tell Dakota a story from history, and he gives his unapologetic thoughts and opinions on it.
If you're like me and can never sit through a history lecture without dozing off, I make sure to interject with a joke every chance I get. It's mostly to entertain myself, but if you like the joke, that's just a bonus.
So, let me teach you and my husband about Norse mythology and how it differs from the Marvel universe, if Rasputin actually did love a Russian queen, and how dogs aren't actually descended from werewolves, much to Dakota's disappointment.
And let me show you the challenges that come with agreeing to be on a show where I tell my wife if the story she told me was good or crappy. Am I gonna sleep on the couch tonight?
So tune in to The Reluctant Historian every Wednesday wherever you get your podcasts to find out.
Well, now, I recently came across some information about an important person from history that I'd never heard of before. However, we all live with the result of his research. In fact, it would be difficult to imagine how we might keep track of time without him. The person I'm talking about is named Dionysius Exiguus, or, in English, Dionysius the Humble. Dionysius lived around the year 470, actually was born around 470 AD, and he lived to around 544 AD. He was born in the area known at the time as Scythia Minor. This region is just to the west of the Black Sea in the present-day countries of Romania and Bulgaria, so we're talking extreme southeastern Europe. Okay, if you don't know where Scythia Minor is.
Yeah.
Well, Dionysius was a Christian monk, and he was very devout in his faith. He was also very skilled in mathematics, and he was fluent in both Greek and Latin. He was really a very intelligent guy. Around the time he turned 30, this would be about the year 500, he relocated to Rome, where he became a respected part of the early Christian leadership. In fact, he was described as, quote, the most learned abbot in the city of Rome. One of the things that brought him acclaim was his Easter table. No, that's not what he served on Easter.
Is it ham, deviled eggs?
Probably a lamb and some, anyway, but.
Oh, yeah, maybe not a ham.
Yeah,
maybe
a
lamb.
lamb. Not ham, yeah.
Lamb.
Yeah.
Right. But rather his calculations
It's not the right time for that.
about when Easter would occur. As we mentioned previously, Easter is celebrated. It's kind of a complicated calculation. It's celebrated on the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. That's a bit of a complicated mouthful, yet Dionysius, using his knowledge of lunar movements and mathematics, created a table showing on what date Easter would occur that stretched for the next 200 years.
Wow.
So the priests didn't have to wonder about when is Easter going to be in the next few years. He had it laid out all for them. But what he is really most famous for is something that we still use and refer to today. Now, keep in mind that in the ancient world, time was counted by the number of years a certain king or ruler had been in power.
Mm-hmm.
You may have read in older manuscripts, such as the Old Testament of the Bible, about something happening in the 3rd year of King Hezekiah's reign or the 7th year of Nebuchadnezzar's rule. Whenever one king died and another took their place, they simply started counting all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And the Romans, they had a similar system of counting the years in the reign of a certain emperor. However, with some emperors, particularly more prominent emperors, the years didn't start over upon their death. They would just continue counting from the time that they took over, even after they were dead. And this was the case with the great Roman Emperor Diocletian. Diocletian ruled from 284 to 305 AD, and he was thought to have been one of the better administrative rulers. He even divided the empire into two halves in order for it to be run more efficiently. After his death, people continued counting time in Diocletian years. Okay. Well, and this was still going on in the 500s when Dionysius, our friend, came along. However, there was an issue. You see, the Roman Emperor Diocletian had been a prominent persecutor of Christians. In fact, he led the Roman Empire's last, largest, and bloodiest effort to wipe out Christianity. This was known as the Diocletianic persecution, and it lasted from 303 to 305 AD. Though Diocletian was responsible for the deaths of countless thousands of Christians, the persecution was not successful in extinguishing Christianity. In fact, Diocletian's successor, Constantine, actually converted to Christianity in 314 AD. But now back, or maybe I should say forward, to our friend Dionysius. To him, it just didn't seem right to calculate time based on such a horrible man as Diocletian. They were still counting in his age in Diocletian years. So what to do? Well, Dionysius decided to calculate time based on the year of the birth of Jesus Christ instead of Diocletian. And this was a great idea, except for one thing. Nobody knew exactly when the birth of Jesus Christ was. When did it take place?
Right.
Well, anyway, Dionysius decided, with his knowledge of mathematics and his understanding of Greek and Latin, and he also had access to ancient texts there in Rome, he decided to give it a try. And after considerable research, he calculated what he thought was the year of the birth of Christ, and he signed that year as AD 1. The AD is the Latin phrase Anno Domini, which means in the year of our Lord. Everything before that year would be BC, or before Christ. The year that Dionysius made this assessment was, according to his calculations, AD 525. Now, think about this. This is really pretty remarkable that 525 years later, he
creates when AD would start.
Right. He goes back and tries to figure out the birth of the year of the birth of Christ and starts counting time from that year. And so he did a pretty remarkable job calculating the year that Christ was born. Or did he?
Only time will tell?
Well, many modern scholars with more precise calculations believe that he was remarkably close, but he may have missed it by about 5 years. They point to the fact that Herod, king of Judea, is mentioned in the New Testament as being the ruler at the time of Mary's pregnancy. By most calculations, Herod died in 4 BC. So most scholars today pin the birth of Christ at about that same year, 4 BC. But still, Dionysius was remarkably close. Think about what he had to work with, and 500 years later.
He didn't have Google.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the other tablet.
That's right. I know it caused some confusion. There's a pretty prominent series on the life of Christ called The Chosen, and highly acclaimed. And one of the episodes about the birth of Christ, it actually mentioned 4 BC, and that caused some confusion with people. How could he be born before he was born? Well, his new system, going back to Dionysius, his new system really didn't actually catch on for another 200 years when the venerated Christian writer Bede used Dionysius' calculations in his own writings. After that, the BC AD system caught on and is still largely used throughout the world today. Mm-hmm. Now, think about that. This means that you will never find any kind of document with an original date on it before 525 AD. There are things that we know were written before that, but they won't have that date because that date hadn't been thought of until later.
That's weird to think about, but yeah.
That's right.
And the British Museum has a copy of the New Testament they believe is from the year 325 AD, but it doesn't say that on there. Now, in recent years, you may have noticed another set of letters, BCE and CE, being used in place of BC and AD. BCE stands for Before Common Era, and CE stands for Common Era. And this is actually not new, but it actually dates back to the 17th century Germany and 18th century England. It was primarily used in scholarly publications that might be read by people of differing faiths and cultures. I think I've noticed it being used a little bit more in print and on the internet, maybe in the past 10 or 15 years. So you do see BCE and CE used, but I think most people still stick with the BC and AD system. It seems to be more firmly entrenched. Now, you got another joke for us, Phil?
Nope, not yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm still good.
we're waiting.
I know it's anticipation. I'm just building it up. I still got time. We're not done yet.
Build me up just to let me down. Oh, anyway, the information about Dionysius came primarily from Wikipedia. Now, a few years ago, I was reading through a biography of George Washington. I had always thought that his birthday was February 22nd. However, this biography mentioned that his original birthday was February 10th.
His original
birthday.
Because they don't want you celebrating the real day, the 22nd.
February 10th, 1732. However, when England switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar in 1750, his birthday was moved to February 22nd.
Don't you love it when they move things?
I'm wondering, what's going on here with moving dates around? So let's dive into this a little bit further. The Julian calendar was proposed by none other than Julius Caesar himself in 46 BC, just 2 years before his fateful trip to the Senate. The calendar became the predominant calendar for the Roman world, and then for most of Europe for the next 1,600 years. It has a normal calendar of 365 days every 3 years, and a 366-day calendar every 4th year. So you might be thinking, well, isn't that the way our calendars work now?
Yep.
Well, what's the big deal? Well, that's almost the way our current calendar, the Gregorian calendar, works, but not quite. You see, a calendar that has 365 days for 3 years and 366 days for 1 year would work fine if the Earth's orbit around the sun was exactly 365.25 days. However, our Earth takes 365.24 days. 1/100th of a day off. That makes a difference of about 14 minutes a year.
And it catches up to you.
Well, it does catch up after a while. It does really make a difference, and over time, that extra 1/100th of a day, or 14 minutes a year, winds up putting the calendar 1 full day behind the Earth every 128 years. Thus, by the time of Washington's birth, the calendar would have been a full 12 days behind the Earth's actual movements. And keep in mind that agricultural societies depended on the calendar to know when it was time to plant. In addition, many church celebrations are closely tied to the calendar and Earth movements, so something had to be done.
So you're playing with 12 days, folks.
Yeah, y'all don't like daylight savings time, but here we go. They added days to the calendar.
Right.
They did what?
Well, Pope Gregory the 13th in the 1580s assembled a team of mathematicians and astronomers to look into this issue. Among the group were Christopher Clavius, who was a German mathematician, and Aloysius Lilius, who was an Italian doctor, astronomer, and philosopher. In fact, Aloysius Lilius is the one credited with developing the formula to make the calendar work. And what is that formula? Well, here it is.
It's not pi, folks. I'm just saying.
Every year that is exactly divided by 4 is a leap year with 366 days, except for years that are exactly divisible by 100. But these century years are leap years if they are exactly divisible by 400. So that clears it all up right there, don't you see? Let's explain that a little better.
That works. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
For example, the years 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years, but the years 1600 and the year 2000 were leap years. I have my youngest granddaughter, Zoe, was born in 2020. So if she lives to be 80, the year 2100 will not be a leap year. So only those years that end in 00 that are divisible by 400 are actual leap years.
I had no idea.
And so that sets the
Okay.
calendar in step with the Earth's movement. Pope Gregory XIII was pleased with the work of this committee, and he introduced the new calendar, named for himself, into practice in the Catholic world in October of 1582.
He was a very humble guy.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
Now, a lot of England was reluctant to adopt this calendar because they had broken away from the Catholic Church. You know, it was King Henry and his wives, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that kind of just messed it up.
But over the next 350 years, most of the rest of the world adopted the Gregorian calendar as its official calendar. Greece, in fact, was the last one all the way up until 1923. They were a long holdout.
Wow. Okay, my brain is hurting. So let's take a little bit of a break.
And now for something completely off topic and off kilter. Brace yourself for the oddity du jour.
And get into a very shallow and fun oddity. Okay, so do you remember when McDonald's had characters that promoted the restaurant, like Ronald McDonald, of course,
The Hamburglar.
and the Hamburglar?
Yeah.
What else do you remember?
Wasn't there a
come on.
Mayor McCheese or something
Mayor
like that?
McCheese.
Go ahead.
Oh, come on. Do you remember?
Grimace.
Grimace.
Grimace,
You gotta
that's
say
what it
Grimace.
is.
Grimace. Yeah.
I was
So,
grimacing.
okay.
And the
So-
wastebasket was a character itself, it seemed like.
I think so. It was really a bizarre world. Okay. So can you describe what Grimace looked like? Do you either one of you remember him? Oh, come on. He was like one of the favorites.
Wasn't he just a sound? I don't even remember.
No, he
form.
was like this big purple monster.
Oh,
like this
okay.
big purple thing.
Snuffleupagus.
No, I need to show you a picture.
Getting them mixed up.
But okay, so listen.
Know your Henson characters.
I was going to say, I think Grimace was pretty much everyone's favorite McDonald's character, but maybe not. You guys.
I was always a
But-
Hamburglar.
But
so,
he was at least one of the most recognizable faces.
or the first three letters.
In spite of his negative name, he was a lovable and happy purple creature. Okay. But what was he supposed to be? Like Ronald McDonald was, he was a clown. And the
Yeah.
Hamburglar was a hamburger.
Hamburger.
Yeah.
Right.
And and all of that. Okay, so what was Grimace supposed to be?
Yeah.
The
Well,
secret sauce.
Cluster of
Oh, wait,
grapes,
no, that's
maybe, I'm
Burger
not
King.
sure.
This is going to blow y'all's mind. Okay, so Wikipedia states that Grimace was a monster, and I'm good with that. But was he really? In a 2021 article for People.com, Dave Quinn writes that Brian Bates, a manager of McDonald's in Canada, revealed shocking news that Grimace is an enormous taste bud.
A taste
So,
bud.
A taste bud. So if
No
you
wonder
look,
he's so happy.
if you look at a cross-section picture of a taste bud, then
Sure, why not?
maybe
Well,
it
sure.
looks-
If you do that, yeah.
Okay, listen, I'm not buying it. All right.
It's still a monster.
At one point in 2012, McDonald's tweeted that Grimace, because this is like, we need to know. Okay.
Right.
Right.
It's important
It's
stuff.
time.
Inquiring minds.
It's
I mean,
time.
really.
60 minutes, what are you doing?
So
You're taking too long, people. I mean, come on. You're supposed to tell us these things.
McDonald's tweeted that Grimace was, quote, the embodiment of a milkshake, though others still insist he's a taste bud. What?
He didn't
okay,
look like
so-
any milkshake, I
An
don't think.
embodiment of a milkshake.
He
Okay, I
looks
gotta bring up
nothing.
Grimace's picture
Yeah,
here.
y'all
I'm still
Google it.
stuck on the whole idea as a taste bud.
As a taste bud, I know.
I mean, I can deal with that. I mean, that's dealable.
Okay, so
But a
McDonald's tried to
Yeah.
offer some clarification in all this confusion in a statement to People, which is where this article appeared. Whether he's a taste bud, a milkshake, or just your favorite purple blob, both of y'all are Googling Grimace.
Seriously.
I should have brought
Oh,
a
I see him.
picture.
I see it.
Okay, so whether he's a taste bud, a milkshake, just your favorite purple blob, the best part about Grimace is that he means different things to different people. The spokesperson said, whatever he is, we're just proud our bestie makes people happy. Still not buying it, people, okay?
Well, he looks more like a taste bud than a shake.
Well, there is
okay,
a whole
I'll
lot
gi-
of shaking going on.
I'll
There's
give you
there's no
that.
straw there or anything.
Right?
Okay, now
Well,
listen.
maybe that's the scarf.
Let's
No,
look
I'm
at
not seeing it.
Grimace's. Let's look at Grimace's history. Okay, he was first introduced in 1972 as evil Grimace.
Oh.
He had the same purple shape, but 4 arms, and in a commercial at the time, swiped all of the cups from McDonald Land to stop anyone from having milkshakes or Coca-Cola. But because this was scaring people,
Yes.
it was scaring children.
You know, the 70s, they were happening time, you know?
Yeah. Roy T. Burgo Jr., McDonald's previous vice president of advertising, stated, "We changed him to a soft, plush, 2-armed blob of a sweetheart who only wanted McDonald's milkshakes and to hang out with Ronald." Okay?
Okay, so he's a taste bud
So-
eating milkshake
yeah,
machine.
okay.
He's reformed
Okay, I can
Grimace.
deal with this.
Well, no, okay.
But not the embodiment of a milkshake.
Here's
That's totally
the thing.
different.
I think they sent him to reform school.
As a child of the 80s who
Obedience
grew
school.
up eating copious amount of McDonald's, all while playing in McDonald Land playground with all the characters as my personal friends, I feel that I carry more clout than any old stuffy businessman. And I'm here to set the record
or
straight.
any of the two of us.
Yeah,
she's
right.
claiming
Because,
ownership. Got it.
y'all couldn't even remember Grimace.
I couldn't remember what he looked
Who?
like. again.
So if he was created as a taste bud or the embodiment of a milkshake, that just doesn't fly if he was negative to begin with.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to believe that they were trying to sell more Happy Meals with an evil taste bud or an evil milkshake?
I have no idea.
So Grimace is Grimace, plain and simple. He's a huggable, smiling, giant, friendly
Taste bud.
monster thingy, and that's that.
Okay.
Taste bud.
I will post a picture of Grimace and I'll post a picture of a cross section of a taste bud. They do look similar, but I think it's just coincidence.
Okay.
Now back to the brainy stuff.
Not sure how to follow that up. Okay. Okay, we need Juliet saying you dropped a clanger there.
He jumped a clanger there. Okay.
There we go.
He is a rotund purple being of intermediate species with short arms and legs. He is known for his slow-witted demeanor.
Slow-witted demeanor.
His most
That's a
common
taste bud.
expression is the word "duh." I wonder who stole that.
Okay, so is that a milkshake or
Yeah,
a taste
it's
bud?
Patrick.
Like,
It was Patrick's grandfather, Patrick Starr.
I never thought you'd be a SpongeBob groupie.
I love SpongeBob. Yes, I do.
I hate SpongeBob.
I do love him.
And now back to something
Okay,
completely different.
Let's reel it in.
Well, now, let me tell you about an interesting conference, shall we?
We got time for that.
Back in October of 1884, an interesting meeting took place in Washington, D.C. The meeting was held at the request of President Chester A. Arthur and included delegates from many countries throughout the world. The purpose of this meeting was twofold. First, to establish a meridian of longitude to be internationally accepted as the prime or zero meridian. Second, to establish a standard of time reckoning to be used throughout the world.
It's about time.
Yeah, really. This meeting became known as the International Meridian Conference. Well, now establishing zero latitude is no problem, as the equator is exactly
Kind of
halfway.
wins that, yeah.
Yeah, halfway between the North and South Pole, but the Earth contains no East or West Pole, so determining the beginning point for longitude was more complicated. It was important because international navigation charts needed to be in agreement. Initially, many countries wanted the 0 degrees longitude line to run through their own capital city.
No.
Can you believe
Everyone
that?
fighting for that? Never.
We wanted to start with us.
Exactly.
However, a research committee proposed utilizing the Royal Naval Observatory in Greenwich, England, which is just about 20 miles east of London, as the most logical place for the prime meridian.
If you're going, through the Navy, okay. Yeah. Okay.
One of the most convincing reasons for this location was that on the opposite side of the Earth, 180 degrees from Greenwich, would be the international date line, the meridian where the new day would begin. Putting the 0 line in Greenwich would put the date line on the 180th meridian, which runs primarily through the vast waters of the Pacific Ocean.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be like one day
Yeah.
over here on this side of the sidewalk and
Right.
Wednesday on this side and Thursday on that side.
This would offer the least amount of disruption, as very few people lived in the sparse islands dotting the Pacific. If you look at a globe, you will see that the date line primarily follows the 180th meridian, although it does jog a bit here and there to avoid island groups. The conference voted nearly unanimously to accept the proposal. The French
Nearly.
still wanted it to go to Paris. You know, they were holdouts, but they
No,
came along later.
The French? Really?
Today, you can visit the Royal Observatory at Greenwich and straddle the prime meridian. My wife and I did this a couple of years ago, and primarily because I wanted a photo from showing my students. And it's an interesting place. It actually was a naval training facility in England for many years, and it's a beautiful location. But they actually have a metal plate on the ground marking where the prime meridian is, and you can stand there with 1 foot in the eastern hemisphere and 1 foot in the western hemisphere. But now on to the other agenda item, establishing a standard of time reckoning throughout the world. It had been common practice for each municipality throughout the clock-using world to set its own time based on marking the point where the sun was at its zenith.
Wait, I can choose to not use a clock?
Well, some countries hadn't quite advanced to using a clock yet.
Oh, okay, okay.
So wherever the sun was straight up and down, that was noon. Okay, when the sun was straight overhead,
That's what
where
the
noon
sundial
was.
would say.
But, the next town a few miles away, it might be a few
Just a
minutes
bit off.
earlier or a few minutes later, depending on which direction it was.
Well, it's a really interesting concept that has popped up through this whole thing is that, way back when we were just, in our village,
Right.
it didn't really matter. And then as the world
Well, it mattered to us, but didn't matter.
it mattered to us, but I mean, it
Yep.
didn't really matter because we weren't trading with people across
Right.
the world. But as trade opened up trade routes and all that kind of stuff, the time became more and more and more important. And then, we had to consolidate our calendars and consolidate our time. And it's continuing.
You mean
There's
cooperate and collaborate.
That's right.
Oh,
And,
wow. That's
we're
just
so
weird.
good at that too.
Yeah, we
right?
do so amazing.
But it's going to continue. Like we're going to continue as we colonize Mars, and
There you go.
as we move out.
Well,
So,
is it going to be Mars first, or is it going to be the moon first?
well,
or are
I
they going
think-
to happen in tandem?
I'll just wait over here until you two are done.
But think
I'll
about
just
it.
sit here.
The moon is part of our time. The moon happens to
it just follows us
create
around.
part of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So, but Mars doesn't. Like,
Well,
Mars
you
does
still
its
have
own
to
thing.
count
It's on
for
its
its
own.
time, right?
Okay. Okay.
Oh, is it time to move on?
It's time to move on.
Time to move back to where we were. But anyway, as rail travel developed in England, it became possible to travel fast enough over a long distance to require continuous resetting of timepieces as a train progressed in its run through several towns. Well, Greenwich Mean Time, which was the mean solar time, or in other words, when it was noon at Greenwich, right on the prime meridian, was established to solve this problem. All clocks in Britain were set to this time, regardless of local solar noon. Chronometers or telegraphs were used to synchronize these clocks, and now rail schedules could then be produced more accurately. So that was a big problem with what time was the train going to get here if everybody was using a little bit of a different time. And, are you going to get there on time to the station? So now they had one time for the whole country. Time zones were originally proposed by the Scottish-Canadian Sir Sanford Fleming at a meeting at the Canadian Institute in Toronto on the 8th of February, 1879. He proposed dividing the world into 24 time zones, each one covering about 15 degrees of longitude.
Makes sense.
All clocks within each zone would be set to the same time as the others, but differing by 1 hour from those in the neighboring zones. The delegates at the International Meridian Conference didn't vote on this proposal as it was outside of the purpose of their meeting, but they did recommend that the local time at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich to be recommended base reference for world time, and that was at the close of their meeting, October 24th, 1884. So they recommended that Greenwich time would be the base for other time zones to calculate from. Over the next several years, all of the major countries of the world adopted time zones utilizing the Greenwich standards as was recommended by the conference. Originally, this was officially called Greenwich Mean Time. However, in 1935, the name was, as you mentioned earlier, Phil, was changed to Universal Time.
Yep.
But the phrase Greenwich Mean Time is still pretty common.
Loosely used around.
Common usage, yeah.
Yeah, so we all got on the same page as far as time, and now daylight savings time.
And then my brain hurts.
Well, if you're feeling a little groggy today, it might be because you lost an hour of sleep the night before last. That's right. Daylight savings time, or summertime, as they refer to it in parts of Europe, went into effect at 2 a.m. on Sunday, March 13th. Of course, daylight saving time refers to the practice of advancing the time 1 hour in the spring and then moving it back 1 hour in the fall.
We giveth and we taketh away.
That's right. So why do we do this? Well, that's a good question. In fact, there's a lot of social media space that's frequently taken up by people complaining about the time switch.
That's right.
Got to complain about something.
I guess so. I kind of like it personally.
I got some time to waste right there.
I do too. But I heard, and I don't really think this is genuine, but I heard that an Indian, there was an Indian saying that only white man thought that he could cut the bottom off a blanket, sew it to the top, and make it longer.
Right. Have a longer blanket. Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of, to me, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, fall's coming when we set the clock back and suddenly it's darker. And, because here in Texas, in the greater cut and shoot area, the summers are brutal. And so we're kind of very happy to see fall come along.
Right.
Yeah.
But then after some months of kind of dark evenings, it's nice. I like when we set the hour ahead in spring. And so all of a sudden, it's lighter outside in the evening when it's starting to warm up. So, but other people disagree. The idea of daylight savings time was introduced by the great American statesman Benjamin Franklin in 1784 as a method of conserving candles. He theorized that utilizing natural daylight during the hours when people are at their busiest would save considerable on the expense of candles. Now, of course, in agrarian times, people that were on the farm pretty much worked when there was daylight and went to sleep when it was not. But people living in towns and small cities that were growing up tended to stay up later. Franklin's idea may have been somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but the concept was put into practice by the Germans during World War I as a tangible effort to conserve lighting and electricity. According to an article in timeanddate.com, there are both perceived positives and negative health benefits that accompany daylight savings time. The authors of the article, Anne Buckle and Vigdis Hogden, and by the way, we're grateful to them. They've given us permission to quote their article directly, so thank you very much to Anne and Vigdis. Anyway, they state some studies show that daylight savings time could lead to fewer road accidents and injuries by supplying more daylight during the hours more people are on the roads. That makes sense. Other studies claim that people's health might suffer due to daylight savings time changes. Proposals to stay on standard time or move to full-time daylight savings time appear on the legislative agenda in the United States nearly every clock change.
People complain.
Since 2015, more than 200 daylight savings bills and resolutions have been introduced in almost every state across the U.S., according to the National Conference of State Legislatures. Didn't know there was such a thing, but okay. Several U.S. states have passed bills in favor of permanent daylight savings time. However, they need congressional approval to abolish the time change. And for this to happen, Congress first has to pass a federal law allowing states to observe daylight savings time year-round, because today's law only allows states to forego daylight savings time. So you could keep standard time year-round if you want to, but you can't do daylight savings time year-round unless Congress changes the law.
Okay, and so you talked about, us having to go to keeping time in a consistent manner because,
right.
Traveling across. However, daylight savings time, 2 states, Arizona and Hawaii, do not do daylight savings.
Right.
Correct.
So half of the year
They're right.
They're on our same time schedule, and half of the year they're not.
Unlike the state of Indiana that allowed each of their counties
Yes.
to choose which.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And then I think India does its entirely own thing. I think it's like half an hour,
right,
or something. I mean, it's just crazy. So like we got it all consistent,
and I believe,
and then we
had all these meetings and all of this, and then we all
Someone
do
had
our
to
own
go,
thing
hey.
anyway.
And I believe China, even though it spans several time zones, puts everybody on the one time zone in China. So
That's right. So okay. So, Steve, you talked about songs at the beginning of this episode. What about the song Turn, Turn, Turn? by the Birds. Yeah. Okay, so To Everything.
What about Big Wheel Keep on Turning?
Oh,
We're not.
Proud Mary. No, we're not on wheels. We're on time.
Sorry, I couldn't.
We're not on time because we're running late in this bit. But go ahead.
Okay, so back to the song. So To Everything, turn, turn, turn. There's a season. Turn, turn, turn. And to every purpose under heaven, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, time to laugh, and a time to weep. And those lyrics were they weren't just inspired by the scriptures of the third chapter of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. They came pretty much directly
out.
From it, yeah.
And I mention that because for the most part of human history, people were agrarian. They farmed their food and they kept livestock. And so this made them particularly aware of the changing seasons.
Right.
Since the weather played a huge part in their to-do list.
Right. Their livelihood depended on it.
That's right. So one of the things they did was to name the 13 full moons of the year. Anglo-Saxons did this over in Europe, while at the same time Native Americans did the same thing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to list the name of the moons.
Oh, boy.
So
I always wondered about these.
And this is really interesting. You do your research and I do my research, but it happened to be from the same website, timedate.com, and the authors are Vigdis Hawken.
Oh.
Okay, so the same guy that had
did the other daylight savings time, yeah.
And also the co-author is Aparna Kerr.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is at timedate.com. So in January.
So thank you for their time.
Exactly.
Thank you for your time. In January, the full moon in January is called the wolf moon, named after the howling of the wolves. And some other names are moon after Yule, because it's after Yuletide, ice moon and snow moon. In February is snow moon. It's called that way because in February is usually snowy.
Right.
And some North American tribes called it the hunger moon. Can you guess why?
When you're the most hungry because it's snowy.
That's right. So the March moon is called the worm moon.
There's the worms again.
Because there's the worms.
There's lots of dancing going on.
They're starting to come out and dance.
That's the festivals.
Also known as the crow moon, crust moon, sap moon. So anyway, all of these, the earth is starting to wake up.
Uh-huh.
April's the pink moon for the flowers that are coming out.
That's nice.
I'm telling you, February 14th, that's the wrong time for Valentine's Day.
Also, it's called the Paschal moon. I didn't know that because it's used to calculate the date for Easter. I had to look up Paschal. It means anything related to Easter. So, and May is the flower moon because everything's in bloom in that month. June is the strawberry moon because that's when strawberries start to ripen. Also known as the hot moon, mead moon because I guess that's when you start honey and you start making mead. Okay. And the rose moon. July is the buck moon because that's when the new antlers start to emerge on deer bucks' foreheads. Also known as thunder moon, hay moon. August is sturgeon moon because of the large number of fish in the lakes where the Algonquin tribes fished.
Okay.
September and October, can you guess?
Shine on, harvest moon.
That's the harvest moon.
In the sky. Yeah.
Also, September is the corn moon because it's time to harvest.
Right.
October is hunter's moon. That's the time to start hunting and gathering food. November is beaver moon because according to folklore, the full moon in November is named after beavers who became active while preparing for winter, also known as frosty moon.
Busy beavers, I guess, weren't they?
Busy beavers. December is cold moon, if you can imagine.
No. What, do we run out of ideas by then?
Come on, we need a new contest. Name December's moon. You guys have something better than that.
Well, it's also called, very creatively, Moon Before Yule, because it's before Christmas. But more common, just January full moon. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
There's all of our moons. And here's we're going to close out with some mind-blowing facts about time. Due to tidal friction from the sun and moon, the solar day is lengthening by 1.7 milliseconds each century. So go ahead and calculate that into our calendar, right? The Earth's rotation is actually slowing down. So in 140 million years, they're all going to have to get together and figure this out. A day on Earth is expected to last 25 hours. So our calendars are just going to have to be thrown out the window, and redone.
Yeah, I don't want to be around for having to figure it out. I mean, Y2K was already bad enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Babylonians who lived in modern-day Iraq were astute observers and interpreters of the heavens, and it is largely thanks to them that our weeks are 7 days long. I mean, because think about it, we could have cut it up
any
into
number
10
of days.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason they adopted the number 7 was that they observed 7 celestial bodies, which separate from the stars. Because, the stars move all in relation to each other. They all stay the same. But then there's things that move in the sky differently from the stars. And that's the sun, the moon, and the planets Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Because you can see those by with the naked eye. So that number held significance to them.
Is that what Saturday, Saturn? Is that
exactly.
Sunday?
That's right. They're named after all of those things.
Oh, okay.
And then, so we're all under the impression that time is a constant, right?
Yeah, that's the same.
That it runs the same no matter what.
Yeah.
That's what we think, but it's really not true. Time, space, and gravity are intrinsically linked, and gravity really does have an effect on time. The higher the gravity, the slower time goes. And because of this, time ticks by more slowly at the center of the Earth than it does on the surface. It also means that the further you get away from the center of the Earth, the faster time goes. So your head is actually older than your feet.
Well,
sweet.
Unless you spend
the hair on my head's falling off.
Unless you spend a lot of time standing on your hands or standing on your head.
Well, I want to balance it out. I mean, what are we talking here? A couple of hours? A couple of days, maybe?
Not even close. Not even a couple of seconds. But, it's there.
Right.
And to incredibly simplify Einstein's theory of relativity, Einstein determined that time is relative. In other words, the rate at which time passes depends on your frame of reference. The effect of time slowing down is negligible at speeds of everyday life, but it becomes very pronounced at speeds approaching that of light.
I think he came up with that theory when he was staying the weekend with his relatives. It seemed like it going on forever.
Well, you know what? And when he was when people asked him about the theory of relativity, he said, when you sit with a girl and you talk to her and you're having a good time, that time passes much more quickly.
Well, everything is relative.
Yeah, that's right, because time is relative.
That's true.
And now it's time, boys and girls, for the trivia challenge.
Well, you know how this works. Like and follow our Facebook page at Remnant Stew Podcast. Like and share this episode post. Put your answer to the trivia challenge question in the comments of that post. The first person to do all that will be the winner and will be mentioned in an upcoming episode of Remnant Stew. So what's our question today, Leah?
Okay, no one has been attempting to answer our trivia questions lately, so I'm going to go ahead and give you an easy one.
Oh, serve it up to
them.
them.
You guys start answering questions.
Serve it up to them.
And it does have to do with time. So name the movie this quote came from and who said it. There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
I love that movie.
All right, it's time to remind you to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at Remnant Stew Podcast. Take the time and email us at staycurious@remnantstew.com just to say hi or to let us know about any other topics you want us to cover in upcoming episodes. Don't forget to go to our website and hit Show the Love and leave us a comment. Positive, please.
Remnant Stew is created by me, Leah Lamp. Dr. Judy Meeker and I research, write, and host each episode, along with commentary by audio producer Philip Sinquefield. Theme music is by Kevin MacLeod and voiceover by Morgan Hughes. Special thanks goes out to Judy Meeker and Harbin Gould.
Time well spent.
Before you go, please hit the follow button so you won't miss an episode. Head over to Apple Music and leave us a review. We love reading your reviews. Share Remnant Stew with your friends, your family, and that weird guy who lives in the clock tower. Until next time, remember to choose to be kind and always stay curious.